With graphics like that, this guy must work out.
Morning, everyone. I thought I would go through some other little pointers that I've learned over the years. Most of these I've learned the hard way. So first thing probably out of the gate that you need to realize is that starting out, unless you're very fortunate, you're going to have a hard time making money while at the same time establishing your reputation and getting your customer base down. So your first year, a lot of business say all the way up to 5 years is kind of your intro period where you're trying to get your customer base established, get repeat customers, trying to get your reputation and your name out there. Most companies, especially the first year, aren't going to be making killer money, especially brick and mortar service type businesses. In reality, it just doesn't happen to where you're, making hundreds of thousands of dollars out of the gate. So if you're looking for something like that, the service industry or services, meaning services you provide to somebody, or brick and mortar kind of businesses, you're out of the gate, you're going to be losing money, especially that first year, just trying to establish everything. So with me, it took me about 2 years to kind of get my base clientele built up. I live here in central Arkansas. If you live out on the coast, somewhere that's a bigger metropolis, I live close to Little Rock, so I still have some decent sized cities around. I cover about 3 or 4 counties in the area. So just realize that starting out, it's not like the schemes you see on YouTube or Facebook or some of the other social media that you get somebody on there in an expensive sports car with a girl sitting in the passenger seat that's bragging about making $100,000 a month starting out. It doesn't work that way. It's a lot of hard work. If you do it like I do, which this is a side business, so I keep up a full-time job and then I do this in the evenings. It's going to take you a couple years before you start seeing some profit to it. So just realize that. Next thing is going to be trying to establish your customer base area. So what geographic area are you going to cover? I said starting out, I did a little bit of everything. Didn't really care who my customer were. I was just trying to get my name out there and trying to establish what my customer base is. And also, if you aren't proficient in a whole lot of things, that first year or two is going to be your learning curve. So you're going to be learning how to do more things. You may realize that some of the stuff you knew how to do starting out, you really don't want to do, professionally later on down the road. There may be other avenues you can go down and key in. You'll find specific things depending on your area that there's a need for. And if you can provide that need and offer a good quality service, professional service, you make a ton of money. So it just depends. So kind of your first year and a half, maybe 2 years, is going to be that learning curve, trying to build up your skill set, figure out what geographic area. Maybe you're lucky enough to where you can cover just one city because you live in a metropolis that has, 1 million people or something. So if you're in the rural area, you still need to figure out, how far out am I going to do jobs? I try to focus on these 1, 2, 3 counties, something within like a 50-mile, 100-mile radius. And then don't hold yourself to just doing those, because you can still make money if you're in an area that's really rural. It's possible to make really good money traveling beyond the area that you started out identifying that you wanted to work in, just bid higher. So just kind of realize that, figure out where you can make what you need to charge for your geographic area you want to focus on. And then realize if you bid on a job outside the area, you're going to have to compensate your bid to make up for the gas and everything in between. Other little things, estimates. Make sure when you do your estimates, write down exactly what you and the customer agreed to. So Scope creep is probably one of the worst issues I've dealt with over the years. Any job I've got that's a horror story that I regret doing is going to be because of scope creep. So, and what I mean by scope creep, say you and the customer sit down and talk about exactly what you want to do or exactly what they want. So they want a toilet replaced, say they want a bathroom remodel, but all they want is new flooring, new toilet, and a new vanity. Realize going into that depending on what flooring's in there, if they want you to remove that flooring, you could end up having to remove the baseboards. You don't do the baseboards right, you could end up possibly damaging the drywall that's in there at the same time. So kind of know all those things up front and tell the customer about them when you're discussing the bid. You say, okay, well, we may have to replace the baseboards, but along with that, depending on what you're doing, you could also have to do some touch-up paint work. You don't work that into your bid, or you don't even discuss it. The customer may be thinking they're getting a turnkey, only though you're bidding on a toilet, a floor, and a vanity, and they're wanting everything done. So document. Document exactly what you're doing. Try to have a conversation face-to-face with a customer. Let them know all of the little ins and outs, things that you might run into. So you replace the toilet, maybe the valve's bad, you could have to replace the toilet valve. You could run into drain issues. You could get a different size vanity and have to move the water spigot. Usually you don't have to move the water lines, but you may have to move the drain, or you may have to get a new P-trap because the existing P-trap for the existing vanity is not going to fit the new sink vanity. So all those little things, make sure you document them. Preferably get their signature on the estimate when you agree. You and them come to an agreement to do the job. Make sure you have them sign it, or at least have it documented. That way you've got something legal to fall back on. So, and then when it does come time to get your money for the job, you've got something in writing. Another little tidbit I've learned over the years. Originally, when I started out, I was all about marketing and trying to get my name out there. So I had my name on my truck. I was advertising in several areas. There's some sports calendars that come out with the local. We don't have any pro teams in Arkansas, but that have the local high school teams football or athletic schedule, and then each business can kind of put their logo and information down at the bottom. Was paying a lot of money to advertise with that. The thing I realized after being burnt a couple times, and I don't even advertise, I've got shirts and hats that me and my people that work for me wear, but other than that, I don't advertise outside of that. And the reason for that is I've had issues where a customer called me, didn't know me from Adam, wanted something done. I went in and did it without, come to an agreement over the phone on what was needed, and then end up doing the job and end up getting burnt, not getting paid. Or another thing you got to realize, that a lot of the advertisement for some of these home advisors and some of the other job listing agencies that are out there, what they don't take into account is, there are bad contractors, but there's also really bad customers out there. There's some people that are just absolutely picky. You are never, ever, ever going to please them. Or maybe they always want something for nothing, so they're constantly trying to work in other things to the job. So as a contractor, you've got to realize that there are bad contractors, but there's also bad customers out there. So my philosophy, and this has worked best for me, is if you get a good customer base, good customers that are good to work for, nice people, pay on time, those kind of individuals, they usually hang around people that are the same as them. So if you work within that realm, get you a good customer base of 10, 50 customers, they end up telling their friends, they end up telling their friends. To me, that has been the best way to be profitable and not worry about, getting burned. Not to say that Angie's List or some of those don't have good leads that end up, being profitable jobs, because there are people that move into an area that just don't know any contractors in the area, and I have gotten jobs that way through real estate agents. But just be mindful. Best thing to do is to document your work before you start it, have the customer, and you come to an agreement on exactly what you're going to do. That way you've got something to start from. So that can be unfortunately a very expensive mistake starting out. So. Other issues, finding help. Sometimes it's best to do things yourself, just because, at least in my area, it's really hard to find decent help. So realize that there's just a lot of people that don't want to work, and it can be quite irritating if you're, I got into about eight years into it. I was at a point where I could hire somebody. I was actually looking. I got 2 people to work for me, and I was wanting to get another crew of 2 to work for me, because I had enough work to keep, 2 crews and myself busy, but I couldn't find anybody that wanted to work. So it's kind of a growing pain issue. So if you kind of get to that hump where you got to start taking those things into account, and maybe instead of growing and taking on more work, you get more particular on what you take on, charge more for what you do, and you still end up turning out to be profitable. So you got to kind of weigh those risks. For me, unfortunately, I just kind of had to realize I'm going to have to do what one crew and myself can keep up with, and that's worked. As that crew gets more proficient, as I get more proficient at doing certain things, we can charge more. So we end up being profitable. The other thing you got to consider is if you do take on more employees, you've got workers' comp, depending on where you live or how you've got your business set up, that you've got to pay for, plus additional liability insurance. Plus, you're spreading your reputation out over more individuals. So when they show up on a job site, you send somebody out there to do something, they are representing you if you're the business owner. So you got to take that into account. Make sure the people you hire, you're confident they're going to represent your business the way you want it to be represented. So that's something to keep in mind. You know for sure that you can't find somebody. It's better to stay small or stay particular and keep your reputation than try to be more profitable and you ruin your reputation. Because word of mouth is the best marketing tool you can have, but you can ruin that really quick, especially in a small area. If you're in a rural area and you're covering a large territory, but it's still kind of a small town feel, you can ruin your reputation pretty quick by trying to expand and not being able to rely on the resources that you're using to expand. So keep that in mind. Another thing, and I have just learned this the last couple years. I did this by myself for the first 7 years. Usually just hired a high school kid to help me on the weekend when I was doing jobs where I needed an extra set of hands. When you do get to the point where you have to expand, so I started out with just liability insurance and a remodeling contractor's license, which is all that was required to do the level of jobs that I was doing here in the state. So that kind of depends on what state you're in. When you get to the point where you have to expand, your liability insurance is likely going to go up, which is more overhead. And then on top of that, you're going to have to cover workman's comp. So there's 2 ways of handling that. And at least based off the laws here in the state I'm in, and my interpretation of them, and I've got agreement from my attorney or from my accountant with this, is if you start out and you hire somebody to work for you, if you're giving them their list of things to do that day. They're relying on you for them to get their work list. They're basically working for you. So you can't legally have them file a 1099. They're basically a W-2 employee for you. So when they're a W-2 employee, you've got to cover them with workman's comp, which is an additional expense. And my workman's comp ends up being even more than my liability insurance. So realize that. But also when they're a W-2, you've also got to take taxes out. And as an employer, your overhead gets hit as well, because you've got to help cover their Social Security and all that other stuff, state, federal taxes, that also comes out. So just kind of weigh that out and kind of realize that up front, because you can get in deep trouble if somebody were to start doing some digging and find out that you had individuals you were using as subs. So basically, as a sub, you have them file a 1099. They're a subcontractor. In reality, what that means is you're telling them, I've got this job and I need you to do this, this, and this. I would like to have it done by day X. That's kind of a sub situation. So when I sub electrical or plumbing out, I tell them what I need done. They coordinate everything with the customer. They go in and do it whenever they got time. It's a little different when my crew that works for me, they call me on the day they want to work, and they'll say, okay, what do you got for me? And I tell them, I need you here at this time, I need you here at this time, or, do this job first, this job second, this job third, on this day, and here's their customer contact information. So just, that's the way I've got mine set up. Dig into those laws where you're at, and do that research ahead of time. That way you know what you're getting into. It may turn out, once you add up all that overhead that you're going to have, that it would be better to bid more, do fewer jobs, instead of hiring out to do more work. So that's where you focused on quality instead of quantity. Just depends. So kind of take that into account. That's something that I've learned going through the growing pains these last couple years, trying to balance all that out. So other issues, I have a lot of, probably about 7 to 10 real estate agents that use me for all their home inspections, pre-sale repairs, post-sale repairs, and then I've probably got 10 to 15 customers that have been using me for several years to do all their little honey-do lists. So they're either elderly women that are no longer have a husband around, or an elderly couple, or even could even be a single female that just doesn't have the ability or the knowledge to do some of the things that they need done. So they'll give me punch list a couple of times a year. They want a door adjusted, a new light fixture put on, bulbs replaced, just little honey-do list items. Personally, I have never found those jobs to really be all that profitable. It's really just kind of getting your reputation out there. Because in reality, a lot of the stuff you're doing, excuse me, is stuff that big contractors aren't going to bid on, because they can't bid high enough on it to make it profitable. And in my area, I haven't found a way to bid on those jobs to where the customer would even agree to get somebody to do it, and still make it profitable for myself. So it's in my area, I've had a hard time making those punch list or honey-do little list of fix-it items to where I make a whole lot of headway. So I'm still kind of learning on those, even after 9.5 years. In order to really make it profitable, a lot of people would just rather let that door keep slapping back and forth the way it is today, versus paying what I would need to charge to make it worth my time. So, and that all depends on your area. The customer base I got is just kind of set up that way. So, if you're fortunate enough to live in an area where money's no object for the most part, as long as you're doing good quality service, you may find that to be otherwise. But in my area, that's been a challenge. Most of my money is made on doing remodels and flips. I do probably 10 remodels each year, and like I said, I'm doing this after work, so 4 to 5 hours each evening, and then all day on Saturday. I don't work on Sundays. So I let the customer know up front, that they're working within that time frame. I don't hide anything from them. I let them know I'm not a full-time contractor. I'm not going to be here from sun up to sundown every day. Excuse me. But I do let them know that when I tell them I'm going to show up, I'm going to show up to the job. I do what I say I'm going to do. I stand behind my work. I try to keep that as a feature for them. And a lot of them, a lot of the flips and the remodels I've had, I've hear all kinds of stories about people that do nothing but flips for a living. That's their only job. And I get my job, I get the remodels done just as quick, if not quicker than they do. And I'm working with, 1/3 the time that they've got, so.
This guy needs to be a poster child for birth control. If you like that video, hit subscribe.